Okay, so welcome back to our MCAT tutoring sessions. And today, last time we talked about the importance of active recall and the importance of flashcards for our study, right? So today we're going to get into a deep dive into Anki, the program that will help us a lot to manage this, to manage our flashcards and to manage distributing our practice over long periods of time. Um, so first things first, you can download the program at this website. So I'm going to basically show you everything. Oh, actually, I just changed the page. Can you guys still see do you see the presentation or do you just see the screen in general? The screen in general. Okay, good. So we can go, to download this, and you don't have to do this now. This is all going to be recorded, so you can just, watch for now and follow it along later. You're going to download this first one here, right? And then you will have it downloaded. So I'll show you what it looks like when you actually open it. Let's switch to the screen. So now, once you open Anki, it looks something like this. So right now, what we see here on the screen is some different options up here at the top. We see it says studied 0 cards in 0 seconds. We haven't done anything right now, right? What I'm going to talk about first, I want to just go through some little basics and some settings before we start, right? So the basics, what is this program? What do we do with this program, right? It is a program for organizing and storing and reviewing flashcards. So first, let's start with how would you make a flashcard? What kind of flashcards can you make? So when you click the add button, this screen pops up where you can, and you have basically a digital flashcard, a front side and a back side, right? So if we're making a typical flashcard, we could write a question in the front. What is a flashcard? And then on the back, you would write your answer. So it would be a tool, a study tool utilizing active recall, for example. So this is a flashcard. So now this is a very basic but very workable flashcard, and this is what it will look like if we save it. So if we press add, it'll save this card. It's added, right? If I close this now, this will update, and we now have under the default deck, there's 3 different options. There's new, there's learn, and there's do. And so we have one new card because we just made one new card. So what does it look like if we click on the deck to actually study it? So we click on the deck, right? And it tells us we have 1 new card, 0 learning, and 0 to review. What we can do is click study now, and it will bring up what is a flashcard, right? The exact card that we made. And so now you would think like, oh, well, what is a flashcard, right? You would think of whatever answer it is, and then at the bottom you would press show answer, or I believe spacebar does the same thing. Spacebar does the same thing, right? And then you have, depending on how close you were to the correct answer, you would choose one of these options, right? You would choose again, hard, good, or easy. And these numbers up here are important. They're going to come back up. These numbers kind of dictate how long it's going to take for you to see the card again. How long it will take to see the card again. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I will go back. I will just exit this for now and go back to where we were. So let's go back to making our flashcards. Let's go a little bit more in depth here. What we just made is called a basic flashcard. A basic flashcard has a front and it has a back, exactly like a normal flashcard on paper would work. However, this is a digital format, right? We can actually make slightly more powerful flashcards, more versatile flashcards, right? One of those types is something called close deletion cards. So let's take a look at what this looks like. And what a closed deletion card is, you'll notice that the fields have changed. Before, in basic, it says front and it says back. But in close, it says text and back extra. So what is closed? Closed deletion cards are basically a fill in the blank style card. So for example, if I piggybacking off the previous card that we made, we could write something like a flashcard is a study tool that utilizes active recall. This is a fact, right? This is a fact that we want to memorize, for example. Now, what closed deletion does is it allows us to basically hide certain words here that we want to see, that we want to be studying. So for example, if this is the fact that we want to know, so imagine this as like, imagine turning this into a fill in the blank, right? So for example, if we wanted to test ourselves on what a flashcard is, we would write a fill in the blank like this, right? A blank is a study tool that utilizes active recall. And obviously, like if we see that card, we want to think, oh, it's what is it? Is it notes? Oh no, it's a flashcard, right? And then that's our question. So the way that this works, the way that you can do this is you highlight the word that you want to turn into a blank, and then you can press this button up here, which is for closed deletion, or you can also press Control-Shift-C or Command-Shift-C. That's to make a closed deletion. So let's try this. And now you'll see that this little format bracket pops up. This is just how the program knows that you want this to be hidden. Okay, so let's make this into a card, right? Let's add this. And I'll close this. And now we'll have two cards in our deck, right? So let's open this. What is a flashcard? A study tool, right? We'll say, let's say we didn't know that, we'll just choose one again. And now look at how our fill in the blank card shows up, right? The part that we didn't want to know, the part that we didn't want to be shown to us has been hidden. And now we have to decide, a blank is a study tool that utilizes active recall. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's a flashcard, right? And then when we click space, boom, it shows us a flashcard is a study tool. So this is how we can make questions out of notes, right? Like if you were just writing notes and you had this as a fact written down, you could then put the stuff into this program, right? And then just close delete the parts that are important, right? The parts that are that you want to be tested on, basically. Now we can even go a step further. And this is why you'll start to realize how efficient and how time-saving this program is, right? Let's go back to that card that we made, the closed deletion card. How can we do that? Well, we have this browse feature. And what browse allows you to do is look at all your cards aside from the reviewing, just looking at them for organization or for whatever, or for editing, right? So this is the browse screen. Can everybody see the browse screen? It's a new screen, so I'm not sure if it. Okay, good. So here's a browse screen, right? And what I have here is my closed deletion card, right? A flashcard is a study tool that utilizes active recall. Now, this is a good card. Is this the only card that I can make using this sentence, right? If I was making another fill in the blank, right? How would I make another fill in the blank? So first oh, sorry, no. I know that, I was just using it to write. Okay. So I was doing this, right? I did this as a question. A blank is a study tool that utilizes active recall. What's another question that I could write here based on this sentence? What's another fill in the blank that I could write? With this one, I'm testing myself on the name of the thing, right? But I could also test myself on another fact in the sentence. On what's actually being utilized, right? There's another question that you can make here. So the thing about if you were doing paper flashcards, you would have to write out two different things. However, the beauty here is that all you have to do is highlight this again and press this button. Boom. Notice how it says C2, card 2. You've now just made two cards. Based on one sentence of information, you created two cards. And so let's look at what that actually looks like. So now we have two new cards. If I click this, a blank is a study tool that utilizes active recall. It's a flashcard. Oh, hold on. Oh, because I used the other one before. Let me see. But basically, okay, yeah. So you can see there's two different ones, right? There's one that says a blank is a study tool that utilizes active recall, and it quizzes you on whether you know it's a flashcard. On the other hand, there's another one that now asks you a flashcard is a study tool that utilizes blank. So these are two different pieces of information that you're testing, and this is very important. We are trying to drill down all of the information into very, very small, bite-sized pieces, because the more small and the more bite-sized it is, the easier it is to remember. And our goal is to have a lot of these little flashcards, essentially, right? So in this case, it becomes very efficient because all you need to do is write out one sentence and then occlude the parts that are relevant for us to know through testing. So that's how those are the two major types of flashcards that you can make. And again, I know this is going to be like complicated. If you have questions at any time, or if you're just confused and you want me to like go over something again, just post in the chat or unmute and ask, and we'll do that. Okay, so the other thing is, right, we were adding cards, right? The other thing is we can add a card to a deck, right? Let's say we want to make a separate deck for whatever reason, right? So what we would do is in the top here, you have the type, right? It's either basic or close. And then on the side, you have the deck, right? And the deck right now is on the default, but I can make a deck, right? So for example, I could press add and I can make a my MCAT study deck. And I press OK. And now I'll add some random card about, MCAT, whatever, right? And then oh no, this is a close, so it won't work. Let's just make a basic card, front, back, right? And I'll add this now, right? And when I close this, boom, I now have another deck. I now have a new deck that I've just made, and it's separate from the previous deck. So you can split everything and you can organize it how you want to organize it. So that's the first part. That's just the basics of making brand new cards from scratch and saving them, where you want. And also, so the browse tool is very powerful. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more once we have some more cards to work with. Are there any questions so far? Okay, so hopefully that's making sense so far. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about how to use this for the MCAT. Why is this so powerful? Why do so many people use it, et cetera, right? So the first thing is, because so many people, and this is true not only for the MCAT, but throughout medical school and beyond, right? Because so many people are using this resource, there are a bunch of decks that have already been made by students before us, right? And they're really, really good decks because it's not just the product of one person's work, but the product of like multiple people iterating on a set of cards over and over and over and over, right? So this is a okay, so I have to say though, there is a disclaimer, right? It's not that you download a pre-made deck and now you're like, oh, I know everything, right? Obviously, if you make your own deck from scratch, right, it is going to be incredibly beneficial for your learning and for your retention and everything, right? If you make your own deck from scratch, it's just going to be better, right? However, it takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time to make, like I showed you, like even though I showed you that it's very efficient and fast to make cards, you're still going to be making upwards of like thousands of cards, right? Because there's just that much information. So it would take a lot of time to do that all from scratch. And the other aspect is, for some of you, right, this might be the first time that you're working with flashcards. It might be the first time that you've ever done any kind of like, you know, digital studying. So it might be hard to get used to making new flashcards from scratch and all that. So in that case, for all of those reasons, I think it's very helpful to start with a pre-made deck as a base that not only will it save you time because you're not making every single fact from scratch, but it'll also give you like a model of like, oh, this is a good card. Okay, I see how to make like a card that's effective, right? And it'll also give you something to study with right away. So this is the deck that I recommend, and this is a deck that a lot of people use. And this is the link, and you can go and you can download it basically, right? Right here. And when you download it, it'll show up as a package. No, it'll show up as, I'll show you. So when you download it, it shows up as like an ap.apkg or something, right? And when you go to file on your Anki, right, and you press the import button, it'll show up right here. You have to navigate to wherever it is, and then it'll show up here. So this is it's an Anki deck package. So we're going to import this, and then we're going to see what it is, right? So I'm going to open this. It might take a bit of time because it is like a couple thousand cards. Okay, so it said it found in the file 2,885 cards. 2,885 cards, right? And then we'll close this, and then it won't show up here until I restart this. So I'm going to restart my Anki and close this. The link, sure thing. And I'm going to post like these slides later, so you have the access to all the links and everything. So now let me go open Anki again. Okay. Okay, so now we've opened it, right? And now we see a third deck is here that wasn't here before. And then this is the pre-made deck that we've downloaded, right? And so if we just take a look, if we just crack it open and we take a look at what it looks like, it is basically a bunch of flashcards, you know, about pretty much all the content that you want to see in general, right? So this is, we're just gonna, so if you click through, right, it'll tell you what it is. It'll give you a little picture for reference, and then there's like usually a link to Khan Academy or some kind of explanation somewhere, right? And so let's say this was really hard for me. I'll press again. Maybe I don't know this either, right? And then if I want to study maybe biology instead, I could click here, and then it will tell me, you know, fetal hemoglobin has greater or lesser affinity. Oh, this is another thing to talk about, how this works. So instead of just hiding the content, right, you can make it a choice too. So the way that you do that looks like this. So in this case, the question is asking fetal hemoglobin has a greater or lesser affinity for O2 than adult hemoglobin. The answer, I believe, is greater because the baby basically needs the oxygen. So it has a greater affinity, right? And then it shows you a graph or whatever. So this has already been all made for you, right? By the hard work of wonderful people in the past. So this is a fantastic resource. It is set up in a way for you to understand it and memorize it quickly. It is good. How do you add links in the deck? Okay, so let me show you a little bit more about editing. So for example, this card is here, right? I can now edit this card. Flag, suspend, options. Where's the edit? Or maybe do I just click? I think edit is down here in the bottom left. I see. So here, so I'm going to show you two things, right? The first thing I want to show you is how to make an option out of a closed card. And it's by introducing this. It's by introducing two colons, and then you write whatever you want for it to be. So for example, if I was doing it, maybe I wanted to test myself on whether it's O2 or something else, right? So I would make this, right? And then I would add on the side here. This thing is gonna mess with me. I'm just gonna cut this here. Then I would add on the side here, is it O2 or CO2, right? And then that would be the question that I've made for myself for this card. So in this card, it's going to ask me affinity 4. It's going to ask me, is it O2 or is it CO2? And then I would have to pick O2. That's it. So this is how you can make a fill in the blank a little bit more specific. And as for adding links, I'm pretty sure you can just link it. Attach pictures is here. If you hover over these buttons, they'll tell you like what they do. Unordered list, attach pictures, record audio. There should be a link button somewhere here. I'm not sure where it is. I don't remember. I didn't add links very often to my cards, so I don't remember particularly how it's done. But there should be an option buried somewhere in here for adding links. I think is this video attaching videos? No, this is to attach to upload stuff. Not 100% sure actually. That's a good question. I'll check and find out for you. But in any case, right? So when it comes to closed cards, right? Only the first text box is actually like the question and actually what you're seeing when you review. And the extra box is just that. It's all extra information. So anything that you want to add for you to look at after the card is shown. So I can close this now, right? And it'll oh, also you can undo if you with Control Z or Command Z to go back. And then yeah. So and see, okay, see, and now we have the one that we just made. Fetal hemoglobin has a greater affinity for O2 or CO2 than adult hemoglobin. O2, right? And so on and so forth. So again, this is a super great resource. A lot of these things are already built in. Now we need to talk a little bit about, okay, so before we move on to settings and how to actually navigate all of this, do we have any questions about about what we talked about so far? Okay, cool. If everybody is still good to go, then we're going to move on to the settings. And the settings are super important and super, in a way, unintuitive. So this part is pretty important. So first things first, we have the preferences up here. I believe that everything here is okay to just leave it as it is. You can turn off show the remaining card count during the review if you want, because like once it gets to like hundreds of cards remaining, maybe it's a little demotivating. So you can turn that if you want, turn that off if you want. Otherwise, all this stuff is pretty okay. Synchronization is for when you have, if you're using, so remember this has a mobile, there's a mobile app too, right? I believe it's free on Android, but it's paid on iOS, but I think they're like basically the same thing for you to review your cards on your phone, right? So when you review your cards on your phone, when you close your app, like it'll sync to like the web server. And then if you want to resume on your computer, then you sync when you start reviewing. So your progress is staying the same on both the platforms. Everything else is pretty much the same. There's a dark mode here if you prefer dark mode. And yeah, this is all whatever. That's not too big of a deal. What's a big deal? What's a big deal is this little cogwheel here. So if you open the little cogwheels, we'll see options. And the options that we have here are a variety of options. It might be a little bit difficult to explain. I'll try to explain it as simply as possible. So first thing I want to talk about is the daily limits. So daily limits is set by default to 20 new cards a day for each deck. That's why when we opened this, it showed 20 new cards for each deck. It showed 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, right? That was the setting that was determined by this thing, right? And it's also giving us a maximum reviews of 200 a day. These settings are not what we want to do. And a big mistake that people make is that they kind of don't really, I don't blame them because this program is a little bit hard to understand. So, you know, the big mistake that people might make is they download this, they hear good things, they download the thing, and then they just start studying cards, right? They're like, okay, this thing, sure. Oh, I don't know about this. Okay, whatever. They just start studying cards. The reason that this is bad is because you have no control over what you're studying. You're just studying based on what the program is giving you. Instead, you should be using the program and tailoring it to whatever you're studying in your day, right? So how do we do that? Well, the first step is to get rid of this limit. So I've made two different sets, right? The default one is a default, and I've made one that I think that you should use, where you have basically this is unlimited new cards and unlimited reviews, right? So for example, if we do this, right? If we do unlimited new cards and unlimited reviews, let me show you for example for this one. If I change it to this, right? It now shows me that I have 134 cards. Wait, no, this is not right. Oh, I think I clicked on the wrong one. Hold on. Oh, and then you also have to do it for save to all subdecks. So it covers all the decks underneath the main deck. So now look what happened. It bumped up to like every card in the deck. So now it's showing that all of the cards are available. This is also bad, right? Because we can't, how are we supposed to do 2,800 cards in one day, right? So what is the solution here? Okay. The solution is that you can go to the browse screen, right? So you open the deck, right? You open the deck. You go to the browse screen, and now you can see all of the material that's in the deck. And let me show you a little bit about how to navigate the screen, because you're going to spend a lot of time in the screen. In the bottom right here, there's very, very important stuff here. Let's collapse note types. We have decks, right? In decks, we can sort by deck. So if I click on this one, it will only show me the cards that are in the behavioral deck. If I click on biochemistry, it'll only show me the cards in the biochemistry deck. If I click on biology, only the cards in the biology deck, right? There's also down here, right? This is the most important, but it's all the way at the bottom. There's something called tags. When you have tags, if we open this, right, you'll see all of the cards are tagged in relation to the material, right? This is very, very important, and this is how we're going to organize ourselves. So, for example, let's say that we were studying biology and we studied the cardiovascular system, right? So obviously today we want to study the cardiovascular system cards, right? That would be ideal for us to do, right? So, or actually this is a bad example because they were showing us this. Let's say we studied the endocrine system today and we want to review these endocrine system cards, right? But they're not showing up. What's showing up instead is the fetal hemoglobin, right? So how do we get the endocrine system stuff to show up, right? This is what we want to study. This is what we studied today. Here's what you're going to do. What we're going to do is click, at the very top level, right? And at the top level, this is giving us every single card in the deck. You can see in the top left, at the very top left, it says browse, one of 2,889 cards, right? So this is every single card in the deck. What we're going to do is use Command A or Control A to highlight every single card. Okay, so we selected every single card. You see in the top left, it says 2,889 of 2,889. Every single card is selected. Now, what do? We right click and we use this feature, toggle suspend. So what toggle suspend does, everything turns yellow. And what toggle suspend does is, if we go back to our deck now, right? Before it said we had, you can see here, before it said new, 2,883. We have 2,883 cards to do. If I close this now though, this will update, and now it says you have finished the deck. Why? Because we suspended those cards. We said, actually, put those cards on hold. I don't want to study these cards right now. So if you go back, there's nothing in these cards. Why did we do this? Because, first of all, we can't study all 2,800 cards now. We have to slowly pick away at it, right? Day by day. And now the only thing we want to do is study those cardio, or we want to study those endocrine cards, right? So how are we going to do that? Well, we open this, we go to browse, right? We use the tag system in the bottom left, right? Here's our tag system. You can see we're not doing behavioral, so we'll close it. We're not doing biochem, we're doing biology, right? And we click on cardiovascular system. And you can see in the top left that there are 71 cards for cardiovascular system. Oh, sorry, no, I was saying endocrine, right? So we click endocrine. There are 74 cards in endocrine, right? Now I want to study these endocrine cards. What do? I select all of them with Control A or Command A. I right click and I untoggle them. They're now no longer suspended. And now what happens if I close this? Boom, I have 74 cards that I want to study. And these are cards that I actually want to study, right? The program, I'm not going to allow the program to tell me what to study. I'm telling the program, show me these cards now, right? Because these are the cards that I just read the chapter of, or I just watched a video of, or I just did some practice problems of, right? So that's how you're going to narrow down. If you're starting with a pre-made deck, this is how you're going to only see what you want to see that day, right? So so that's a little bit complicated. Do you guys have any questions about that? Hopefully it's making sense and it's not overly confusing. You can see that this is every single card, right? So these are all suspended except for a select few that are from the, where are they? Right here, right? Except for a select chunk that we unsuspended, because that's what we wanted to study, right? And so basically you're going to go through the tab, you're going to go through your book or whatever, right? And you're going to unsuspend the parts that you want to study that day, and so on and so forth. And that's how you're going to be able to get through all of the material a step at a time. So now we're actually still not done yet. I've just shown you you know, how to download a pre-made deck, how to set it up properly so you're not seeing like a bajillion cards, right? But there's still more to go. So, and fortunately, this is all like first time setup. Once you have this stuff like customized and fixed, it's a breeze. Like then all you're doing every day is basically just opening this, clicking study, whatever you have to study, and just going through your cards. And making new cards. After that, it becomes very, very fun, even fun to use, honestly. So let's go back to those options that we were talking about. So the first one that we changed was the daily limits, right? We changed it so that we could review as many cards as we want. We're going to dictate that, and as many new cards as we want. Now the next thing is called learning steps, and this is very important, and this gets to the very essence of what Anki is. So to explain this, I'm going to go back to my slides for a second, and we're going to look at, actually, let's look at which one is default. Let me see. Probably this one, right? Let's just make sure that this is a default. Yes, okay. So if I click this, and if I open this, and if I look at the bottom here, we see that again is 1 minute, hard is 6 minutes, good is 10 minutes, and easy is 4 days. Now, what controls these numbers? Well, actually, it's those options, right? So what if instead of 1 minute, 6 minute, 10 minute, 4 days, I think there's something better, right? What if I think there's something better? So if I go to these options, right, and I switch it to the things that I think is good, and I open this now, and I look at it, you'll notice that the options have changed, right? Now, instead of again being 1 minute, it's 15 minutes. Now hard is 12 hours. Now good is 1 day, and now easy is 7 days. Why did this happen? Why did we do this? So to understand that, we have to understand how Anki actually works. And basically, when you see a card for the first time, we consider the learning phase, that we're learning a card. And so remember that forgetting curve that I showed you before about how we want to see it more in the beginning, but then maybe not so much later on, right? That's how we're going to effectively learn something, right? We could review this card every single day, but that's a waste of time and efficiency. We can't do that for every single card, for every single fact, for every single concept. So instead, we're going to review the card more at the beginning when we're learning it, and then we're going to allow ourselves more break time in between reviews. So that's essentially what these learning steps are here. So let me show you an example on these slides. So for example, if under the settings that I'm showing you guys, right? Let's say you start a new card and you see it for the first time, you didn't know it, but you just learned it, and you're like, okay, show it to me again, and you press again. When you press the again, the card will return to you in 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, hopefully like you retained it in 15 minutes, you didn't forget it within the 15 minutes, and you're like, okay, I understand this card. Let me hit the good button. Once you hit good, that tells the program, okay, this card is on hold until the next day. Why is it on hold until the next day? Because that's the setting. Because we're saying 15 minutes and then we're saying 1 day. That's what the setting here means. Then let's say after 1 day, so let's say that day 1 was Monday, right? We reviewed it on Monday, and then we said on Monday, okay, show it to me in 1 day. So on day 2, on Tuesday, we see the card and we still remember it. We didn't forget it. So on day 2, we press good again. That's going to tell the program, okay, this person understands this card. They don't need to see it tomorrow. They don't need to see it the day after tomorrow. In fact, we'll give it to them after 3 days, right? And we say 3 days because that's what we put here, 3 days. So what we're doing is we are staggering the card, right? We're increasing that interval between how many times we need to be exposed to the card. Because and this is going to create very, very, very strong retention of our material, because we are showing it to ourselves right before we forget it, right? 3 days out, you could probably still remember it. 4, 5 days, 6 days, at that point, you might forget it, right? So we're trying to And we're also not trying to make it 2 days or 1 days because that's too early, right? We're trying to hit the sweet spot of right before you forget it. Oh, like look at this right now and remember, okay, the stimulus is triggering my memory, it's refreshed, okay, I'm good to go. So what happens after 3 days? Well, after 3 days, that's considered, so now the card moves on to a different situation. So this is the learning steps. The learning steps are when you're first learning a card. After you complete the 3 learning steps, the 15 minutes, the 1 day, the 3 days, the card will graduate. And what that means is the card will now move into a separate timetable that's handled by the program. And what it's going to do is it's saying, okay, this card is graduated, show it back within 5 days. So overall, from the first day that you started, you're now going to see it 10 days. So after 3 days, after you graduate it, after the 3 days, you'll see it in 7 days on the 10th day. So because it took you 5 days to learn the card, the 1 day, the 15 minutes, the 1 day, and then the 3 days, and then it took you 5, and then it will give you 5 days, or wait, maybe that's a typo. Is it 4 days? I think it's actually 4 days. It's 4 days to learn and then 5 days graduating interval. So it's actually 9 days. It'll show back up in 9 days. So overall, this is all to just explain how the program is slowly forcing you to like remember it over longer and longer periods of time. Right? And that's exactly what we want. And it does this for every single card and every single fact. That's why it's truly amazing, because there's no way to possibly do all of this on your own, right? You can't possibly say like, oh, I remembered this like 3 days ago, so I'll do this now. Or it would be really hard, right? So the program will take care of it for you. The program will know, let's show this card. You need to review this now. So let me show you this card now, based on the settings that we give it. So overall, just to show you, so hopefully that explains a little bit of what all this is about. So here we have the default settings, right? 1 minute and 10 minute, and 1 day for graduation and 4 days for easy. Rather, we're going to change it to these settings, to 15 minutes, 1 day, 3 days, and 5 days bonus for graduation and 7 days bonus for easy, if you say that it's an easy card. Okay, so this is just what you need to make the program work properly over like a long period of time. Now we have something called lapses. Actually, wait, before we move on to lapses, any questions about this whole thing? Also, I'm not sure if this is a default. You should put it to oldest cards first, because you want to be reviewing your oldest cards first. I think that just makes more sense for retention. Any questions on this whole thing? This is more, you don't really need to understand why it works to use the program, but I think it helps a little bit if you understand like what the program is actually doing for you. But if you didn't really understand the explanation, that's okay. Like just understand that these are the settings you need to make this work correctly. Okay. So moving on to lapses. Lapses is referring to when you make a mistake, right? So for example, if you got a card correct plenty of times, and then one time you're like, wait a minute, I've forgotten this. I don't remember this actually. When you don't remember a card, you're gonna end up hitting again, and it's kind of gonna get moved to a different timetable. It's moved to a different schedule, and the program says, okay, this person doesn't actually know this card that well. They need a little bit more time with this card. So the best settings for that are to do something like this, where you were confused. So let me see it again in 20 minutes, right? That's going to give you a little bit of a reinforcement on the first day, and then you'll see it again after a day, right? So I think this is very good for I was confused and I missed it, show it to me again in 20 minutes just so I can remember it, and then show it to me again in a day just so I can remember it. These other these other things. So the minimum interval, right? I prefer to increase it to 3 so that you won't just, the problem with 1 is that you might end up seeing it too much, right? If you see 20 minutes and then 1 and then it shows you 2 again in one day, that's a waste, right? We don't want it to be too far out and we don't want it to be too close together. We want it to be spread out appropriately so we're seeing it just before we're about to forget it and we're getting the most bang for our buck. So in this case, the minimum interval should be 3. Leech. And also, if you're confused, like while you're looking at this on your own computer, if you hover over the eye, it will kind of give you a brief explanation about what it means. Leech is basically when you miss a card too many times. And if you miss a card too many times, in this case, 8 in a row, if you miss it too many times, that's indicative of 2 things. 1, you're trying to memorize something before you actually understand the material. Memorization comes alongside or after you memorize, after you understand a concept, right? So it's much harder to memorize something that you're not familiar with. So if that's the case, you should go back and try to understand what you're doing, right? The other reason that you could be missing a card so much is because maybe your card is not well written. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it's unclear. Maybe it's too many concepts bundled into one and it's not specific enough, right? In that case, you might think about rewriting that card or breaking it down into separate things. But basically, if you do miss a card often, right, what it will do is it will tag it. It will tag the card, and then when you browse, you can go browse for it and find it. And so that'll kind of give you a way to look at like, oh, what cards am I missing the most often? There's a timer here, right? If you don't want to get distracted, you can put in a timer, and that will kind of, force you to want to stay on track. Burying cards is, let me see if, yeah. So I think burying cards is good because what burying cards means is that, remember how we made that one card that had 2 questions built in? What burying cards means is that so whether other cards of the same note will be delayed until the next day. So what this does is it kind of spreads out that material. Instead of answering both of those questions in the same day, I would answer one question today, and then it would give me the other question tomorrow. I personally prefer that because it spreads out the material over more time, and I think it's more helpful for understanding over a long period. So I do like that setting. Now, we're almost done. We're almost done here. The last thing is something called the maximum interval. So the maximum interval is basically how long can this card go until I need to show it to you again. Regardless of whatever the schedule says, this is kind of a manual override. It's like forcing the program to say like, okay, even though this card is scheduled to show up within a year or something, or if maybe a card is scheduled to show up in 6 months, right? Maybe a card is scheduled to show up in 6 months, but your exam is in 3 months. If that's the case, you could make your maximum interval equivalent to 3 months, right? You can make it 90 days. And then that would force the program to show you every single card that you have within the next 90 days. Now, obviously, this is going to increase your workload because you're going to be seeing much more cards, right? It's going to compress your timeline. It's going to push up cards that you weren't supposed to see sooner. You weren't supposed to see them. They were supposed to be 6 months out, but you said, no, show me everything within 3 months. So it's going to push those cards up and you're going to have more cards to do. But overall, this is something you can basically put as your, I would put this as like your, how many days you have until your MCAT exam, right? So if you start studying like 6 months out or whatever, then this could be like 180 days. And that would ensure that you're going to see all your cards. None of your cards will be gone beyond. You're ensuring that you'll see all the cards before you finish your or before you take your exam. Okay, so last but not least, I think that's pretty much everything. Is there any changes here? Oh yeah, the last thing is to the new interval, I recommend bumping it up to like 0.1 or 0.15, because when you miss a card, if it's set to 0, that means it's gonna kind of reset the card. If you miss a card, it shouldn't be a reset. It should be more like I need some help with this. So if it's at 0, it will reset the card. Rather than resetting the card entirely, put it at like 0.1. So it won't reset the card entirely and you won't be seeing it like every day. Again, we want to spread it out a little bit. We want to increase that that initial period. We don't want to be seeing it every day. We want to see it one day, then maybe 3 days, then 5 days, and bumping it up slightly to 0.1 is going to help us with that. Okay, so basically, when you go later to the recording or whatever, and you're inputting this into your computer, this is what it's going to start with. So let me show you again how you get to the screen. You're going to click on the cog wheel, right? The cog wheel, and you're going to go to options, and then it's going to be on default, right? You're not going to have this. You're not going to have this MCAT thing because I made this. You have to make it on your own. So for you to make it, what you have to do is you have to go to here. You have to click add preset, right? So you're going to add preset. You're going to add whatever MCAT, right? And you're going to press OK. And then now in this MCAT, in this new one that you made, you're going to look at the settings that I have here, and you're going to input those settings, right? So here you are, and I'll take a picture of this and I'll probably put it in the Google Classroom so it'll be easy to see. So you're going to copy these settings and you're going to put it into your thing, and then you're going to save it, right? You're going to say save to all subdecks, save to all decks that are under that the mile down deck, save to all subdecks. Now all of the decks are updated with those settings. And so now when you, so let me just do that. You go options. This is the settings that I want. Save to all subdecks. Boom. So now when I open these cards, I will have the correct timing. I'll have 15 minutes for again, I'll have 1 day for good, and I'll have 7 days for easy. This is essentially what I want. Another thing, when you're reviewing cards, you should go with when you're learning cards, unless you really know it and you're like, oh, I don't need to see this for another week. I know this. Then you hit easy. But if you're learning, then you press good, because you want to test yourself if you know it again the next day, right? So all in all, that is essentially everything that you need to know to get, oh, actually, no, there's one last thing. So we talked about the pre-made deck. We talked about how to handle it. Now, there are also some add-ons. Again, this is a very powerful program because many people around the world are working on it to improve it and all sorts of interesting things. So there are some add-ons that you can browse here and kind of download and add to your Anki and customize it. So the 3 ones that I'm just going to recommend today is, first of all, the review heat map, which is very, very nice, very pretty, and it shows you it's a tracker, basically. It tracks your studying, it shows you how much you've been studying, and it's very satisfying to, have all those days filled out, and you're going to, it's going to help you like keep a streak going and want to keep studying. Another one that's super helpful is edit field during review. So for example, if you catch a mistake while you're reviewing, this will allow you to just click directly on the card and edit it, rather than having to click edit to open a new menu. So this is quite a nice one. And then the last one here is, this is just kind of a fun one. This is puppy reinforcement, where every time you click a card or however you set it up, right, it'll show you a cute puppy picture every time you do a card, and maybe that'll help you, want to study. So basically, there's a ton, any kind of add-on that you can think of, they probably exist. You'll go to this add-on page and you can browse for yourself. I'll just post a link in the chat if you want to browse there. But there's a lot of different add-ons. I've just shared some of the ones that I personally like and use. let me show you how we can download one of these add-ons, right? So the way it works is you can kind of scroll down and find the number, which is right here. This is the add-on number. So it says here, to download this add-on, please copy and paste the following code, right? So I copy this code, right? And then what do I do? Let's go back to Anki. Let's go to Tools. Let's go to Add-ons. And then there's a blue button right here that says Get Add-ons, right? So I'll just paste that code in, right? Paste that code in and press OK. Boom, download complete. Please restart. So let's restart it. Let's close this. Let's restart. And now you'll see right here that I have a brand new feature. I've just added a brand new feature to my Anki that's going to track my my studying over time, and I can customize it however I want. Maybe I want a different color. Maybe I like magenta and whatever, right? So it's very, very customizable, very versatile. You can really get into the weeds and like down the rabbit hole of like how to use this, and you don't have to. I basically have given you everything that I believe I've given you mostly everything that you need to like really get started using Anki in a serious way, in a habit way, in a way of that you're doing maybe 100 cards or 200 cards every day and truly learning. You're going to be surprised at how much you can learn. This is the closest that I can think of to like straight up downloading information into your brain, because it's really, really effective. Like once you really start going through this, you're gonna see like how good, how responsive your brain is just seeing this kind of cues, right? A blank hormone is a hormone that consists of amino acids. Oh, that's a peptide hormone. Boom, a peptide hormone, right? It's very, very powerful. And it's, I think that it's really well worth your time for memorizing and truly learning the content. So that's basically everything that I have to teach you about Anki. If you have any questions, post it in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we will talk about how to actually use Anki for studying and how to review full-length exams. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can post in the chat. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break and we'll come back at 6:05. Or actually, let's come back at 6:10. Okay. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is how to actually integrate Anki into your studying, right? And this is, I'm just going to generally talk a lot about how a typical study day might look like. So the first thing we're going to do, right, we talked about active versus passive learning. The first thing that you have to do is kind of passively learn and get started, right? Either by reading a chapter or watching a video. For the most part, that's going to be how you're going to expose yourself to the topic, right? You're either going to read a chapter of a book or you're going to watch a Khan Academy video or some other video. While you're doing that, right, you're probably going to take some notes. And so I know yesterday we talked about, you know, how you can actively take notes. I'm going to come to that. For now, let's just imagine that we're just writing typical notes, right? Typical bullet points of important facts, right? So we're reading the chapter, right? We're writing down notes. And once we're done with our chapter, we have maybe, you know, a Google Doc full of notes and whatnot, right? Now, this is a very, very important part that you need to actually learn and to actually study. The important part is you now tackle practice problems, right? And you tackle the practice problems, open note and open textbook. Why do you do this, right? Shouldn't you do it without looking at the textbook so that you know that you learned something, right? Well, because we are not focused on memorizing right now. Memorizing, we are letting Anki handle. Our flashcards are going to take care of our memorizing. But in order for us to be able to actually memorize those things, we need to understand what it is that we're learning. For us to understand what it is that we're learning, we need to be asked questions about it and to answer those questions correctly. So that's why what you're doing here is you're tackling practice problems with the textbook available to you, with the notebook available, with the notes available to you. Why? So you don't have the excuse of, oh, I would have gotten that right if I knew the equation, or I would have gotten that right if I remembered the name of that organ or something, right? Or that cell. We don't care about the matter of memorization at this point. Remember the example that we talked about in the very first session, where the question was like, what color is the sky, versus like a much more involved question that just assumes your knowledge of the thing, of the content, right? So what you're doing here is basically by tackling the problems with open notes, you're kind of assuming that knowledge already, right? You're assuming the knowledge. Okay, I have the knowledge. It's not in my brain, but it's on the paper here. I have the knowledge available. Now, can I understand the question and answer the question? The knowledge is available to me. The content is available to me. But can I actually do the critical thinking? Can I critically think about this topic? This is going to help you a lot, right? Because which one is easier? Is memorizing something easier, or is it truly understanding and answering questions, difficult questions about a topic, right? Obviously, memorizing a fact is much easier than understanding and explaining all of it. So that's why a lot of your time should be spent focused on trying to understand something in a critical, thoughtful way, right? So that's why you want to tackle the practice problems, open note and open text, and see, how far you can get. Inevitably, even though you have the notes available to you, you will get stuck and not understand something. You will. And so when you're stuck in this way, that means that there's something you don't understand, right? What is the best way for you to learn it? Write more notes. Write out what it is that's wrong. Write out what you don't understand. Write out the information that you were missing, all of that, right? Fill out your notes until you can solve that problem and you understand what you did wrong, right? Fill out your notes. Now, here comes the part where we turn those notes from passive into active. Now we have a bunch of notes that have all the information that we needed to know, that we learned that we needed to know. Now we can turn them into Anki cards. So I recommend that you have that pre-made deck, and then you also have your own deck that is stuff that you specifically didn't know and was important for you to make into a card, right? So then what you can do is, once you're done, you can now review the pre-made cards, those facts, and your created cards. And now you've reviewed those facts, and now you'll get started on the journey to memorizing that information. And you are very well suited to memorize that information because you really struggled with the concepts by tackling those practice problems. You really fought hard with the practice problems and exhausted any kind of gap in your knowledge that there might have been. So this is a very, very efficient way to spend a less time doing passive and more time doing active. But we can make it even more efficient, right? And the reason that I have writing down notes here is because I know most people are just used to writing notes, right? And it might be hard to get used to using Anki right away and integrating Anki, right? But once you do get used to Anki, or if you do get used to Anki, what you can do is cut out the middleman of the notes and go directly into Anki cards. So what it would be is like, you're reading a chapter and watching a video, and then instead of writing down notes, you can just write down those questions, right? And whatever questions you have, you could even write down directly as flashcards in Anki, right? And then You're going to tackle those practice problems, open text with your cards. Whatever gaps in your knowledge you have, you're going to edit the cards and you're going to make new cards. And then you're going to review the cards. And that's how you really assimilate new knowledge and understand it from the first time and then memorize it going forward. This is along the lines of how I would tackle new topics. So is there any questions about any of these steps, how you would sit down to study some material? Overall, does it make sense? Okay, great. Very good. Awesome. So awesome. So what we just covered was basically how to integrate, how to study a new topic, right? Now, that's one aspect, like when you're going chapter by chapter and you're learning material in an organized way, right? The other thing is full length exam review. So full length exams we talked about are exams that are practice exams that mimic the real MCAT, the real testing conditions. And again, you want to mimic the real testing conditions because it is the best way for you to desensitize yourself to the strength of the exam, to the stress of the exam. So basically, right, you basically, it's very well written out, like exactly what the timing of the exam is. So you should aim to do this under testing conditions. And so what are testing conditions, right? You're going to be in a room. There's going to be a camera on you the whole time. You may be required to wear a mask. I'm not sure if you're still required to wear a mask. At least when I took it, you were. You have the choice of like getting a pair of like headphones or earplugs. I much rather recommend the earplugs. They're much more comfortable than the headphones. And you have a what how do I explain it? You have a erasable pad rather than a piece of paper. So let me show you. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe it's called a dry erase sketch pad or something? Let me see if I can find it. Because you can buy it. No, this isn't it. Maybe it's not a sketch pad. Dry erase testing pad. No. I think the one I bought was for the LSAT. I forgot exactly what it's called, but basically it's a blank thing that's laminated, and it's a dry erase. So you use markers to write. So I would recommend like buying one of these for practice to just get used to it. Because that's what you're gonna have access to rather than paper. But I have to find the exact name of what that thing is called. I forgot what it was. So anywho, back to what exactly can we do to fully simulate this exam environment, right? Don't necessarily take them at home. Maybe take them at a library, maybe take them at your school library, find like a quiet place or whatever, and just work through this, right? Also, it takes a long time. It's like a long chunk. It's 7 hours, right? So you do want to find a way to set aside that time, because if you don't practice this, you're going to have like stamina issues, right? If you've never sat down for like a 7, almost 8 hour test before, the first time should not be the real thing, right? You have to get used to it some way. So testing conditions are very important. Testing conditions are a great way to minimize stress and to get used to it. So another question, right? When should you take full length exams? one thing that you should do is you can take a diagnostic full exam before studying. I think this has its pros and cons. I think the pros is that you kind of get a real idea of like, what you're up against, right? What the exam is really, what it really takes. The con is that like you may or may not like get a score or something, and then you might get like obsessed over that score and whatnot. So really treat a diagnostic as purely a diagnostic, right? It's just for you to see what the exam is like and to kind of get a feel for what material that you need to work on more than the other material, right? So diagnostic at the beginning, not terrible, not bad. Just treat it as a diagnostic. Don't, again, have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, right? If you do badly on your diagnostic, who cares, right? The whole point is that you are climbing a mountain, right? You're not starting at the top, you're starting at the bottom, right? So regardless of what your diagnostic score is, treat it as a starting point and move forward, right? We're going to talk more about motivation and mentality, and you do need a lot of mental strength to get through this process because it is a lot of mistakes and it's a lot of learning, right? So it does take time, but there are things that you can do to really to cope better and get through it. And eventually at some point it's going to flip and it's going to become fun. It's going to become fun to learn things that you, or maybe not so much fun, but maybe fulfilling. Because I often think about, this is a bit of a tangent, but like if you think about it, where you are now and where you are in the future, right? Like if you imagine yourself in the future, how do you imagine yourself? Probably somebody who's very intelligent, somebody who's very like capable, professional, doing the things that you want to do. You're in med school or you're in residency, you're treating people, right? And you have a wealth of knowledge, right? But how did you get that knowledge, right? You're not going to get it in a day. It's going to take you years. It's literally going to take you years to get that knowledge. And so at some point when you're going through this journey and you realize, wait a minute, I'm doing it. This is it. I'm getting the knowledge right now. At that point, it kind of becomes personally fulfilling. And you kind of want to push yourself and challenge yourself to know as much as you can. At least that's how it was for me. So yeah, just keep pushing forward and you are it's not going to seem as stressful as it might seem right now. Um, so so yeah, so take as many full lengths as you can within reason, right? You don't want to take a full length like every what would be too much? So too much would be like if you're taking too many full lengths and you're not giving appropriate time to review them, right? What I mean by take as many full lengths as you can is, maybe when you're far out, maybe like every other week or once every week, depending on everybody's schedule. Everybody's going to have different schedules, right? But you do want to take them intermittently. You don't want to stack them up towards the end. You want to, oh, this is the next point, right? Distribute full lengths throughout your study schedule, right? Because it's going to help you it's going to help you track like what you're doing properly and what you're not doing properly, right? If your scores are improving, that's really good and you're really happy and you can continue what you're doing the way that I've kind of taught you guys. If there's something going wrong, maybe like, your scores are okay, but then, oh, you're really struggling with cars. That tells you that you need a little more cars practice. You need to dedicate more time to cars, right? So this is why these are diagnostics. These are for you to just say, hey, let me do a status check and see, am I actually improving? What do I need to put more time into, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to distribute full lengths and you want to take a bunch of full lengths. How much? Honestly, the answer is like as many as you're able to, or as many as you can. And when I say within reason, I'm saying like as long as the full length is meaningful. So for example, you wouldn't take a full length and then do a day of study and then take another full length because where was your time to improve? What's the point of that? You're going to have two similar full lengths. Rather, maybe you take a full length and then you take a week or a week and a half and 2 weeks. After that period of time, you could definitely expect to see improvement, And if you don't see improvement, then that tells you like, oh, what I did this week, maybe this strategy wasn't a good way to do it for me or whatever, right? So use them as checks. Use them to see, okay, is what I'm doing working? Is it working for me? Another thing, yeah. So taking the full length, right? You want to emulate your environment to the testing environment as much as possible. The screens at the Pearson centers are really weird, and they, instead of like normal resolution, they're this resolution, and they have like black bars on the side, which has the side effect of making the cars passages seem really, really, really long, because the passages are like squished together, and they look like they're much longer than they are. So I don't know. That's just something that you could get used to. You could so that you don't have to change your screen resolution. I'm just telling you so that you don't get caught off guard when you actually sit down for the exam. Another thing, the official exam has these keyboard shortcuts, and these keyboard shortcuts work for the official full lengths that the AAMC gives you. So get used to using these because it will just save you time, right? Alt H for highlight, very important. Alt S for strike through, very important. These are very, very good, powerful shortcuts that you're going to use all the time when you're taking the test. And like I said, mimic the environment as much as possible. Go to an unfamiliar environment. Eat kind of like what you plan to be eating on the test day. Sleep the way that you plan to sleep. Like, as much mimicking as much as you can is going to make test day just another day, just another full length, right? And really, it's kind of crazy. Like your body knows when that test is like the next day. Like I remember the night before the actual test, like I couldn't sleep even though I was very prepared and very confident. I still couldn't sleep. I was just like I just had adrenaline pumping because like I knew how big it was and I knew what it was. So you really want to be taking every step you can to kind of trick yourself into like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal, right? Okay. Um, Last thing we're going to talk about, what sort of full length should you use, right? And I showed you last week, and I'll post those slides. I showed you resources for like free exams that you can get, right? Basically, I'm showing you here what the best full length material is out there, right? The closest stuff to the real MCAT. The best one is full length number 4 from the AMC because it's a real MCAT. I actually know somebody who took this as their real MCAT, and then they were shocked when they saw it in the practice material. This is a real MCAT, and this is the one that you want to take like close to when you're. Oh, I think I have this on the next slide. So we'll talk about that. But this is the best one. You don't want to use this early. You want to use this towards the end. The other ones are the other really good ones are the other full lengths from the AMC. Then B tier, you can make your own tests out of AMC questions, right? Because we have a bunch of question pack material. So you can just take the amount of questions and just match it to you can just match it to this, right? You could take 59 questions of chemistry, physics, 53 questions of cars, 59 questions of this, and then boom, you've made your own full-length exam, right? And the full-length exam, again, is like, if you're making your own tests, the breakdown is that 13 of those questions are going to be discrete standalone questions that are not related to a passage, and 46 of those will be passage based. So you kind of want to maintain that ratio if you're making your own tests. So you can make your tests out of AMC questions. You can make your tests out of UWorld questions, also very good because there's like 2,000 UWorld questions, so you have plenty of questions to work with. And then everything else is basically all the other third-party stuff because they kind of have some issues with like their cars not being that representative or their psych-soc being a little bit weird. It's not bad to use third-party material because they are exams and they will test you, right? But it is like if you have a lot of time, I would recommend starting here, but don't make the mistake of like leaving all the good stuff for too late, right? You need at least, I would say, 3 months to get through this like rapidly with like, solid dedicated studying, and maybe 4 to 5 months to get through it all at like a leisurely pace. Like 4 to 5 months in terms of like, you're doing other stuff at the same time. You're not studying for hours and hours every day. You're just part-time studying, right? You're looking more at like 4 to 5 months to get through all of this stuff in a reasonable way. By reasonable, I mean like you're actually going through it and paying attention and spending a lot of time on the material and absorbing all the material. I would say that's like the minimum for really doing well on it. So when it comes to everything else, only if you have enough time should you really bother with it. Otherwise, you can start straight with like Khan Academy and UWorld, and then once you're done with that, you can move on to the AMC stuff. So how predictive? Does a full length actually help you predict your real MCAT score? My suggestion is that you take a full length, which should be the full length number 4 from the AMC. Take a full length about 2 weeks before your real MCAT. And if you find that the score is not what you want it to be, you should postpone or reschedule your MCAT, because it would be very difficult to significantly change your score within 2 weeks. It's not enough time. So again, this is your litmus test. This is your status check, right? It's like, how much are you, I forgot. I actually completely don't know what I was going to say. Basically what I'm saying is this full length 4 is going to be your check to see like, am I ready or not, right? If you get a score that you're happy with, then take the exam knowing that like, your score, your ultimate score on the real thing may be a little bit higher or a little bit lower, usually a little bit lower. Just because of stress, just because of, unfamiliarity with it's more likely that your score will be lower than it will be higher, but not that much lower. It would be in that range. So this is actually, if you're curious, this is my practice exams and my my scores. So I'll show you how so what I did was not actually the best, right? I did not spread it out enough. So you can see how I have a problem here. All of my exams are within like around the same range in my score. That's because I took one basically like every week, and that wasn't enough. That was really too compressed, and I kind of ran out of time. So the what I recommend is that you should spread it out significantly. And so my ultimate score was not as high as my practice exams, but you can see here like the score breakdown. And yeah, so each section is scored up to, I'm not sure if I actually talked about how the scoring works. Each section is scored up to 132 for a total of 528. And then that correlates to a percentile. So the percentile means like you did better than other people. You did better than, for example, 90% of other people who took this section, right? And so that's kind of how they score you for the exam. And I think that's about it. So again, when you're planning your full lengths, you need to tailor it to your own schedule. You don't wait till the last minute because you won't have enough time to actually benefit from your reviews, and spread it out. And if you spend like 7 hours doing a full length exam, guess what? The next day, you should spend 7 hours reviewing the exam. You should, because the reviewing the exams is just like this process, right? Where you're tackling practice problems and then filling in the gaps in your knowledge. You need to go back and review that exam and see, okay, what did I get wrong? Why did I get it wrong? I have to review this. I have to create Anki cards so that I don't get it wrong again. And then boom. Then you've truly used a full length to its fullest extent. You've taken it. Just the act of taking the full length is only the beginning. Reviewing the full length, understanding why you got answers wrong, understanding how to avoid those pitfalls in the future, those are all really important, and that's what you can do. To review the full length and to make those Anki cards so that you won't make those mistakes going forward. So overall, I believe that's it for today. Yeah, so do you guys have any questions? Yes, I'll be posting the slides. I just need to upload yesterday and today, and then everything will be good to go. Oh, actually, hold on one second.